You're listening to the E-commerce Impact Podcast, where we share the latest marketing strategies to grow your e-com store and have more impact.
Hello and welcome back, everyone. So this week we've got something really special for you guys. We are replaying in its entirety a workshop that myself and my team recently delivered to a group of entrepreneurs, preparing them for the quarter ahead for Q4, which is traditionally the healthiest, most high revenue time of the year for most e-com brands, even those that aren't super seasonal or don't have a sort of gifting element. It's still usually the busiest time of the year just because there's Black Friday, there's people with a higher propensity to spend, and there's just a lot more going on at this time of year. So if you are, whether you're planning to do a sale or not for Black Friday, and even whether you're a brand that's traditionally a gifting brand or not, this is a must listen. We cover all sorts of strategies, both on the Google side and the Facebook and Instagram or paid social side of things that you can implement in your business and be really prepared right now for what you need to be doing now, what you need to be doing in the run up to the busy season, to the peak season, and then some tactics and strategies you can employ during that busy time. It's really important to remember that this is one of the most competitive times of the year. So even if you aren't a gifting brand or you're not doing an offer, you need to bear in mind how competitive it will be in the ad auctions on both Google and Facebook, Instagram, and the other paid social platforms at this time of year. And make sure you've got a plan, even if that plan is to pull back a little bit during that time. So without further ado, I'm going to switch you over to the workshop, and I hope you enjoy it. You're here for our workshop on how you can prepare yourself for a fantastic Q4 in eCom. It's the most exciting high revenue time of the year, but it's also the most competitive. Every year it gets more interesting. Last year was pretty crazy. We had iOS 14. We had people coming out of lockdown. It was a pretty challenging time. This year is challenging for new reasons. So we want to make sure you're really prepared and you've got lots of great ideas, strategies, and tactics to really make the most of this time of year. So in this workshop, we're going to talk to you about what we noticed last year, what were the big trends last year, what we think is going to continue this year, what you should be doing now, what you should be doing by the end of October, and what you should be doing during the sale and gifting season to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are out there. And stay till the end because we will be saving the best for last, which is actually what you should be doing during that important period. So you wouldn't want to miss that. We are an e-commerce growth agency for direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. We specialize mostly in paid social, Google Ads, and Klaviyo email marketing. We've been doing Black Friday and Q4 and Christmas campaigns for at least 4 years now, and we've gotten better and better as the time has gone on. We've had some amazing results, which I'll talk you through in a little bit. But I just wanted to introduce the team here. Charlotte Sargeant is our head of paid social strategy. I'm the CEO and founder of Webtopia, and Pedro is our head of Google strategy. So we have put together all of our knowledge from the last few years of running these kind of campaigns so that you can learn from us what works well. Just so you're familiar with Webtopia, we work with lots of amazing D2C brands, lots of them in the sustainable and ethical space, from fashion to lifestyle, food and drink, baby brands, quite a range there of premium lifestyle brands. And we had some incredible results last year, despite the fact that it was a pretty tricky time last year. iOS 14 was only 6 months having happened, and it was pretty competitive. We saw the highest CPMs, or cost per thousand. So the advertising costs were the highest they'd ever been. But despite that, with really good planning, with planning your offers really well, planning your campaigns really well, having a really good set of strategies that you've laid out ahead can mean you can still do really, really well in this period. It may be more competitive, but consumers are much more hungry and much more ready to buy than any other time. So if you plan it well, you can have a fantastic result like so many of our clients did. So a few examples, just so you know what we're capable of and that actually our advice is worth listening to. So for one of our jewellery brands, we increased purchases by 369.39%, with an ad spend only increased by 227%. So paid social delivered a tracked ROAS of 4.54 times for this brand. And we know that the tracking is not good post iOS 14. So we expect that the actual return on ad spend was much, much higher for this brand than what we saw tracked. So a really amazing result there for this jewellery brand. We worked with a dining and kitchenware product that, I kid you not, these numbers are real. They may not look real, that drove store revenue from 63K in the previous quarter to 3.3 million pounds in revenue. So that was a 4,700% increase in transactions. So what it showed was this is a brand that they had not so much stock in the previous quarter, and they had a product that was really great to sell as a gift. And we were able to massively scale them by having a really great plan, by really getting everything ready. And we'll talk to you all about that, having the creative ready, having the email flows ready, having all of the budgets really prepared so we knew what was going to happen. And that was how we were able to get such a massive scale up for that particular brand. And then also another example of some of our results last year, a home interiors brand, we increased their tracked revenue by 171% from 24K to 65K, while increasing their ROAS by 46%. So actually like more than doubling their results, but actually also the return on that spend was much higher. So even though, yes, ad costs are much higher at this time of year, if you play your cards right, you can deliver a much better return on investment than you would in other periods, therefore justifying spending much more during this time. So that's a bit of a flavor of what we did last year. Now we're going to dig into how we did it. So first and foremost, I'm going to hand over to my team. So the format of today is I'm going to prompt them with questions, but they're going to talk to you exactly from the horse's mouth how it all worked for them. And then I'm going to ask extra questions that help you guys to learn more. So first and foremost, I'll start with you, Charlie. So what did you notice last year as the key themes across the paid social accounts that we were running?
So I think you covered some of it there, definitely with those results. The attribution was such a challenge, like you were saying, iOS was kind of fresh in. We know now that there's a lot more modeling, so there's a lot more tracked data than we had this time last year. So last year was particularly tricky because it was difficult to see what was working. We could see the revenue going up in the back end, but not in the tracked accounts. So yeah, that definitely saw that being a bit of a challenge. But what we did find was with some broader audience, the attribution was actually better. So when we went with broad or really big lookalikes, that kind of thing, or really, really large stacks of interest audiences, those ones, we did tend to see a little bit more data there. Although that won't be a problem for this year, I think it's just helpful to add and to know that those big audiences, you might see a little bit more data.
Mm-hmm.
Naturally, CPMs were higher. About 30% we saw last year, CPMs were higher. So it'll be interesting to see how that pattern goes this year into Q4. We know, obviously, CPMs have been rising pretty much year to date, apart from the last couple of weeks where we've definitely seen agency-wide those CPMs coming down a little bit. So that's exciting. And it might mean that actually the Q4 CPMs aren't quite as high as we anticipated. So with everything happening in the industry at the moment, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but also just, economically, I think there's advertisers that are coming out of the auction at the moment. So those CPMs are lower, which is a great time to start the prep. But yeah, that might also mean that our Q4 CPMs aren't as high as we'd anticipated, which means better results.
Great.
And just one final thing I want to call out for creative. We did find that static image outperformed video last year. That's not to say we'll see the same this year. We would always test everything and just make dynamic decisions based on the data that we get. And we also found with creative that had some data behind it did really well. So when we left the business as usual or the BAU ads running, even though they didn't mention the sale, the data and the optimization already built in the ad account really helped those ads to still perform during Black Friday. The slight caveat with that one is you need to have the offer really visible on the website, potentially a site-wide offer. And then you get the amazing surprise and delight of sending traffic to your website without talking about an offer, but they find an offer when they get there, which really helps with conversion.
Cool. And what about you, Pedro, on the Google side? What were the key trends you noticed last year?
So we noticed that the competition was higher for sure versus the previous year, and as such, with high competition and also less search volumes, the CPCs were also higher, which highlighted how important it is to prepare off season and to get all your aspects of your campaigns right. And one key learning we noticed as well is is that the extensions on the creative side, extensions perform better than dedicated sale ads, which supports the idea that you need to keep your evergreen ads running, as opposed to cutting over to sale ads that we don't recommend. We also got some nice learnings from Google Analytics, as it allows to view real-time conversion rates and channel performance on the key dates. And it allowed to maximize the exposure because that data is real time. So you're not going to be missing out on strong conversion rates and strong performance.
Yeah. So there's interesting themes across both Facebook and Google of the delayed attribution. I guess the platforms are just experiencing a lot during that time, but also generally we see that anyways, delayed attribution has been a problem because of the changes in data privacy. And interesting seeing as well that using ads that are already in existence in the account versus creating a whole lot of new ads for your sale period seems to be an important thing across both. So that's really interesting. Okay, quickly moving on then. What should brands be doing now? It seems crazy. We're in a heat wave in Europe. We're hot. We're not really thinking about Christmas. What should brands be doing now, and why is it important to act now? I'll start with you, Charlie, on the paid social side.
Yeah. I think there's definitely a lot that brands can be doing right now. And that's why, we felt now's the time to obviously have this conversation and do this webinar. So in terms of what brands can be doing right now, I think it's really important to start thinking about building email list up. So, paid social, Google, Klaviyo, email marketing, these are all kind of separate things or can be seen as separate things, but they've got to be aligned and it's got to be combined as an overall marketing strategy. So what we are doing for our clients at the moment is really encouraging starting to grow the email list so we can do lead generation ads, or we can send traffic to the page to sign up for email lists. And the reason why this is something that can be super effective and really helpful is because the CPMs are lower now, especially as I mentioned with the last couple of weeks, CPMs coming down. You can grow the email list cheaper than ever right now. If you save it to October or even beginning of November, those CPMs are already on the way up. So you'll see those cost per leads increasing. But if brands start growing their email list now, then it's cheaper. And also they've got longer to warm those brands up. So the caveat with this one, I guess, is make sure that you've got really good flows and automation set up so that anyone who joins your email list will go into some kind of welcome series where you can introduce your brand, tell a bit of your brand story, and start building that connection right now. And I think that's really, really important. And actually, it's probably never too early to do that. What we saw last year with a few of our brands, so one of the jewelry brands that we worked with, they did their lead generation fairly early. And then as they got closer to Black Friday, it was about mid-October, they started sending campaigns out there, and the ad creative and the messaging on that lead generation campaign was sign up to our email list to get the first access to our Black Friday sale. So that messaging, not quite relevant just yet, I would say, but you can definitely bring that in a little bit closer to the time. And we actually generated over 1,200 leads for them at 87 pence a lead. So that messaging of get first access, be the first to know, get it while it's hot, really, really worked at growing that email list in a super cost-effective way. And we also know that retargeting those email lists is super profitable. So one of the confectionery brands that we work with last year, they got a 9% conversion during the Black Friday period on their Black Friday ads. So just targeting the entire email list got 9% conversion. And we also targeted a specific segment of that email list, which was engaged in the last 3 months. So that would include all of those people who came in from the lead generation activity. And that one converted in double digits, which was, let me just check my notes there, 19%. So that 3-month engaged list got a 19% conversion. So the numbers really show that this is super, super effective and can really help.
Yeah. And that's conversion on the actual ad. That's not conversion on the email campaign, right?
Yes.
That would,
right.
any email activity they're doing would be in addition to what you were doing with the ad targeting. That's awesome.
Next up, what you could be doing right now, or what you should be doing right now, is really thinking about that offer and planning the offer. So are you going to do your offer just for Black Friday weekend? Are you going to do it for the whole week? Are you going to do it for the whole month? There's a ton of options with how you can run these kinds of offers. And really, it comes down to testing and thinking about what's relevant and what works for your brand. So as a general kind of rule of thumb, what we tend to see is that running longer campaigns will work quite well for higher average order value brands. So if you're selling something with a really high ticket value, running that campaign for longer is kind of advisable, or what we would tend to do, because it's a longer purchase decision. So people need a bit longer to decide. If it's a higher value item, they might want to do some research, look at competitors, look at UGC, or like read reviews. And that decision will just naturally take longer. So campaigns that run over a longer period of time can really help that. And what it also does is really gives the algorithm a chance to optimize. So generally with higher AOV, you're going to see higher CPAs. That's natural. So the data is going to be coming into the account much more slowly. So if you're only running the campaign for 3 days, the campaigns aren't going to get much data to optimize and really nail down, the segment of audience and the type of people it should be going after. On the flip side to that, if you've got a low AOV product, and those barriers tend to be smaller, a bit more of an impulse buy potentially, short campaigns work really well there, because you can really, really lean into the urgency of Black Friday and like, we're only doing this offer for 4 days. You're not going to see this offer again. Biggest offer of the year. If you're running campaigns for a whole month, it's a bit more difficult to create that urgency. Not impossible, but just a bit more difficult. So if you've got the lower AOV price point, you can really, really lean into that. And that is super successful. Also about the offer, because this is an important one, so I've got a few points on this one for consideration. Are you going to do a site-wide offer? So, 20% off everything, or are you going to do it on specific products? What we tend to advise our clients is just try not to make it too complicated. For some brands, it's not possible to do 20% site-wide. The margin might not be there, or the profitability might just not make sense. But what we did find is that when the offer is too complicated, you're battling against everybody else doing offers. You've really got to cut through the noise. But if your offer is difficult to understand, then you just won't get the clicks. People will just scroll on by. They don't have the attention or capacity to spend time understanding that, when everything else in their newsfeed and around them in the real world, as well as digital, is throwing offers in their face. So, and we had a brand last year. It was a female hygiene brand, and they offered a freebie. It was a related product, so it wasn't, just socks or merch or whatever, but they offered a freebie with a spend over £35. And what we saw actually during the Black Friday period was CPA for those ads was 164% higher. So it was more expensive than the normal BAU ads. So that added complexity had a real knock-on effect on the overall performance and the overall results, because the BAU outperformed it significantly.
BAU is business as usual. So that means they evergreen the ads that you had running normally. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The ads that were normally around.
Agency internal term.
Yeah,
cool.
jargon is there. Another thing that you might consider is incentivizing bigger purchases for increasing average order value. So if you really have ROAS goals or revenue is the goal, then you can really help to up that average order value by giving discounts on multiple purchases together. So one of the confectionery brands that we ran last year, they had a 16% increase in average order value for November during their Black Friday sale versus October the previous month. And that was even with the discount applied. So they were given a really generous discount, but the average order value was still 16% higher, because they were incentivizing that bigger purchase and that bigger basket value.
Yeah.
And then just one final point on the offers. If you don't discount, because we do have a few brands that just don't do discounts. As Jessie mentioned, we work with a lot of sustainable brands, and some of them don't have the margin to go really deep on discounts. But it's super important to really just take advantage of this period where people want to buy. They're literally sat there with their credit, well, this is how I like to picture it anyway, sat there with their credit cards ready to make purchases, and they're just waiting for the right person to get in front of them with the right offer to make them buy. But if you can't do discounts, or you don't want to do discounts, or if it's not a part of your branding strategy, there are lots of other things you can do. So one of the brands that we work with, she sells luxury playmats for babies and toddlers, and she doesn't do sales. It's just part of her brand strategy. She don't do sales. So what we did was we pushed brand Friday related messaging, but with normal offer. Basically, what we did for that brand who didn't want a discount is we used her normal newsletter sign-up discount. So she did do sign up for the newsletter, get 10% off your first purchase. That was generic practice for her brand. So we used that exact same offer. It wasn't a deeper discount. It was the exact same thing, but we just packaged it up in a Black Friday message. So we made it Black Friday related. And what we do with her, and we've been with this client for a few years now, and for the last 3 years, we've done this exact same strategy for her. And we actually run the ads prior to Black Friday and turn them off for Black Friday weekend because we know that those CPMs are just going to be wild. So we make it really clear in the messaging, like, we're not going to be live Black Friday. If you want to get the discount, you've got to do it now. Offer ends 26th of November. Be really, really clear. Tell people exactly what you need them to do and when you need them to do it. And what we saw was the CPMs were 60% lower for the duration that we were running the offer versus the Black Friday weekend, which is huge. And this really had a knock-on impact on the results. So our CPA decreased by 29% versus the previous month. So whilst we were running that offer, the CPAs were 29% less, even though it's the exact same discount for the newsletter sign-up that we've always run. So there's ways to do it. There's ways to get around it. And it's just super important to make sure that you're present and talking about Black Friday, Cyber Monday, whilst everybody else is at the same time.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else to add on what brands should be doing now, Charlie?
One of the other really key things that we do with our clients is really getting to know the numbers. So really understanding what the goals are for that period. So if you really want to use Black Friday to increase your customer base and go out to new customers and, drive growth and for your brand, then that's going to be different goals and different strategies to if you're really just looking for revenue. So if you just really, really want to drive revenue, the strategy might be to go back to some existing customers, use those email lists, use past purchaser lists and get those conversions in that way. But those two strategies would be really, really different. So it's super important to really, really understand the goals. And it's then important to align the offer to the goals. So an example of that, let's take the ROAS brand, the brand who really just wants to drive revenue and get as much return on that ad spend as they possibly can. And what we would be doing with that brand is like really helping them to figure out what that offer would be and make sure it's conducive to generating higher AOV. So for the brand who wants ROAS and revenue, we'd be suggesting the bundling perhaps, like, are there any products we can bundle? Can we give a discount? How can we drive the average order value and get that revenue for you? I think, and part of that, so I won't go into too much detail on this because I end up geeking out and I will just keep on talking. But for our clients, we do really in-depth forecasts. And what we do look at is the key three drivers of performance. So the cost per click, the conversion rate, and the average order value. And what we do is forecast that to the best of our knowledge based on what happened last year for that brand, based on the trends that we're expecting to see. And what that does is gives us a target CPA and a target ROAS. And then we know kind of exactly where we are. We absolutely don't have a crystal ball. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But we can use the data and our knowledge to really accurately forecast where we think things are going to go. And then you know exactly what to expect. And once you've got all of those numbers figured out, you can really start to plan your stock. So if you can predict what the CPA is going to be and you know how much money you want to spend, then you've got volume for stock. And that can just really make sure that you're not left with too much surplus stock, because you don't want to come out of a promotional period with too much stock, because then you're going to have to go into discount again. But you also don't want to come out of a promotional period having run out of stock halfway through because the demand was so great and you weren't able to fulfill it. So that part with the numbers and the forecasting is super, super important for overall business health and just making sure that you can meet that demand.
Yeah. And I think as well, if you have a lot of stock and you want to shift it, being flexible in terms of like, okay, there might be an ideal ROAS that you want to achieve, but if the market competition turns out to be so high that actually, if you were happy to accept a slightly lower return on ad spend, that would unlock a ton of volume. But if you're working with an agency or you're doing it yourself, just get really clear on that rather than sticking to this ROAS and therefore missing out on tons of new customers versus accepting maybe slightly less profitability, but a lot more volume. It's always knowing like where that trade-off is and being prepared to like knowing your numbers well enough to be able to go for it. One of the things we noticed last year is customers buying something during Black Friday, but then buying more of it after the sale period was over. So they're trying something out that they then might buy for friends and family. So if you have a product that someone might buy multiples of later on, giving them that discount, maybe you acquire that customer at you don't make a profit off them on that first purchase. But if you have a gift related flow that follows them up straight after they purchase, you might find that they buy, if you nudge them, they buy multiples, if you delight them with that product. So bearing in mind that the short, sharp sale during Black Friday can be a great time to acquire customers who do become long-term customers. So yeah. So over to you, unless you've got anything else, Charlie, over to you, Pedro. What should people be doing now on their Google account?
A few things. I would say start assessing the historical performance, also off season, and understanding your customer profiles, changing search behaviors, expanding the keywords to include the seasonal related queries as well. As Charlie and you said earlier, audience building and targeting is going to be critical for seasonal success as well. And it's crucial to cast your net well ahead of your peak period, so you can start bringing users into the funnel and be ready to remarket when the season kicks in. Long-term remarketing lists can ensure you reconnect with prospects who engaged with your brand last season or even last year. And then segmenting those lists into various groups, such as recent versus long-term or product-specific interests, for example. Those can then be used to create targeted similar audiences as well. From the sourcing and the perspective, which has a huge impact on shopping, of course, we recommend to fine-tune the product assortment and the pricing and any attractive deals or offers for the key season. This is the time to talk to the merchandising teams and analyze demand so you're ready with the right product assortment. And having something we noticed is having a sale annotation added in the feed and coordinating with your agency to ensure that any changes to product priorities are addressed in the shopping strategy is essential. Our kitchenware brand saw a 5-fold increase in PPC revenue in November last year versus October. And getting the shopping feed and the campaign strategy in a row was crucial to achieving that.
Absolutely.
Then in terms of, testing new campaign types and being well in advance of the peak, working out the kinks of your core strategy, I would recommend to start testing Performance Max if you haven't done it yet. And now is the time. It's a new, for those that don't know it, it's a new type of goal-based Google Ads campaign that allows advertisers to access all the inventory from a single campaign. And, it comes with a lot of benefits because it encompasses all the Google properties in a unified way and allows to track the customer journey in an increasingly complex environment. And with more and more ways to research products and shop online, advertisers need a comprehensive automated solution. And this is what it's doing.
Yeah.
By reaching more sites, you can attract more customers and generate more conversion. We have seen in our shopping campaigns grow significantly at acceptable CPA and ROAS levels since we started using Performance Max early this year.
It's a pretty exciting, it's an exciting new channel really. And it's one of these ones where the more data you can give it now, the better it will perform when it's more competitive, right? So setting it up now, getting it working, it takes some time for the data to kind of crunch and for Google to get to know what works for you. So yeah, starting early with it is important, right?
Definitely. And well set up Performance Max campaigns will be an essential part of e-commerce growth this upcoming festive season.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Cool. Anything else that people should be doing now?
Well, I would also recommend to, invest in your window shoppers. So front load the budgets earlier to get ahead of the competition and invest in the window shoppers because you want to ensure that you're bidding and budgeting early. So getting in front of people and filling those remarketing lists we said earlier.
Yeah, we were chatting before the call about the fact that it's just so important and we're going to have consumers a little bit more tight-fisted this year, less likely to spend on impulse. And so building that relationship with them and that anticipation around your product and your brand, particularly having a strong brand and a strong brand relationship is going to be what makes you stay top of mind versus the competition. So I think that's really key. Okay, awesome. So on to the next section, which is I've lost it off my screen. Hold on. Here we go. What should you be doing? What should you do by October? So thinking about the Christmas season is really it kicks off. I mean, I always think in the UK and Europe, it's around about when the brands start advertising Christmas, which is usually around the 1st of November. But in that lead up in October, you have early people who are planning, there are people who do all their Christmas shopping in October, who plan ahead. So what should we be doing as brands on these platforms during that kind of October month prior to kind of sales happening, when you're still kind of getting things ramped up? Over to you, Charlie.
It's just that the anticipation. Which name?
Yeah, sorry. I am alternating.
So I think something that brands should definitely be thinking about doing, I mean, even starting now really, but keeping it running in that lead up to the Q4 period, is get those retargeting audiences built. So obviously with iOS, some of the more pixel-based retargeting, we know there's a little bit of, discrepancy there. We know we're not going to have everybody in those audiences. Facebook is doing some modeling, but yeah, we know it's not going to be as accurate as it has been, 2 Black Fridays ago prior to iOS 14. So what we really think, and what we'll be advising our clients to do, is really build those on-platform audiences. We know they're completely unchanged and impacted. So thinking about doing brand awareness campaigns can help. You can get that really, really far and wide reach. Another one which we'll run for our clients, and tends to be our go-to, is the engagement campaign. So really making sure the algorithm is going after people who will engage with the ads, whether that be like, love, comment, whatever that might be, to really build those retargeting audiences of Facebook and Instagram engagers. And then the third option would be video views. So if you've got some really nice video content of your brand, get that out there under a video views objective to start populating those video viewer audiences as well. And that really plays into what you were saying, Jessie, about how this Black Friday is different in terms of needing to building like a relationship with your audiences. And now is the time to do that. You can build that relationship, tell your brand story, tell them what you're all about, like get the founder on a video, like really, really connect and build a relationship with the people who are your ideal customers. And that will really give you the edge when these people are being targeted by your competitors, competitor products. There is still going to be, a finite amount of money that people can spend. My image of people sat there with their credit card, as, wishful that might be, people aren't going to have loads and loads and loads of money to spend. We know there's a lot of economic pressure at the moment, and we know consumer confidence is down. So, you might be trying to get someone to buy from your brand. You're not just competing with other people in your niche, but you're competing with everybody who's trying to get that disposable income from the people in the newsfeed. So yeah, telling your brand story, making a connection with people, do that on email, do that on Facebook, do it in Instagram, do it wherever you can. Just tell the story, create your relationships. And that can be done super low cost as well, because those types of campaign objectives are naturally much, much cheaper than purchase objectives, conversion campaigns with purchase optimization. So yeah, right now might not have huge return on investment, but because the cost is low, the risk is also low, but can have a huge reward when it comes to Black Friday.
Definitely.
Next up, I've got, sorry, did you want to add anything to that, Jessie?
No, go ahead.
Next up, I've got make sure your website is ready for traffic. So, Facebook ads is just the first part of the journey, or Insta or Google or TikTok or whatever paid channel it is that you're doing. That's just the first part of the journey. When people get to your site, you need to make sure that the site is really, really ready to convert. And CPMs are going to be up. Q4 always has the highest CPMs. So if you're not doing everything you can to make sure that these people convert when they reach your site, then you are leaving money on the table. So have a look at your conversion rate optimization. Have a look at the conversion rate on your site. Is it aligned to industry benchmarks? Do the data analysis now. How's your add to cart rate? Are you getting, 20% of people adding to cart? How's your cart completion rate? Are you seeing 30% of add to carters completing the purchase? If not, why not? Have a look at it on mobile. How's the journey on mobile? Does it feel good? Because we know that's where most of the delivery happens in social placements, is on mobile. So have you checked how the checkout process is on mobile? Like all of these things will really, really help to prepare you for that Black Friday / Christmas period where, every penny counts. So yeah, CRO, do the CRO. Similar concept to above, but kind of related to email. So do your email hygiene, like make sure that you've got your flows there ready to go. Make sure the automations are there, like work smarter, not harder, right? Like you don't need to be doing, manual stuff all the time. Set a couple of hours aside, half a day, and make sure your flows are all set up to really keep your audiences warm and to, again, just not leave any money on the table. A really big one, which is quite often missed by brands, is abandoned cart recovery. So that is really, really optimized for making sure that there is not a penny left behind for the consumer who added to cart and the doorbell rang, or they decided they wanted a cup of tea, or the postman came and the dog started barking. These things happen. Life does get in the way. People, as much as they are on their phones, they don't live in their phones. So yeah, that abandoned cart series is just, the tip of the iceberg in making sure that you're getting all of that revenue. I know, Jessie, you're definitely a lot hotter on the email side than I am. Is there any other like email flows just quickly that you would think are a no-brainer and a must-have?
I think it's having those specific flows for the period. So like I said earlier, like if you're running a sale, a short, sharp sale during Black Friday, for instance, making sure you've got a special flow for those new customers that are coming in from that. Like you could just have it running to new customers, reminding them of your other products, or putting in more of a gifting spin on things. So really thinking about during this period, like are the customers going to be different that are coming in, and what would they need what would suit them in terms of a flow? Another thing to think about too, actually, is I just remembered this, like the customers who shop from you during the gifting period are going to be slightly different from the customers who shop from you other times of the year, because they're buying often for someone else. So have a look at you can look at your Klaviyo list, for instance, of people who bought from you in the same time last year, and you can use that to create audiences and also create campaigns inside Klaviyo. Or sorry, I shouldn't say just Klaviyo and your email marketing, but we always recommend Klaviyo. We're not affiliated. But yeah, so making sure that you're thinking about that. Okay, this is a different group of people. So how does my email change at this time of year in terms of who I'm targeting with what messages, and what flows could I set up to really take advantage of the different behavior and the different people that are on the site this time of year. So yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Anything else from you about just in that lead up in October?
Yeah. I guess the biggie really in terms of actual process, I guess, or, setting the ads up to run, is really making sure that you're considering everything in terms of copy, creative. My advice here is don't rush, take your time with it, get it right. With copywriting, for example, once that offer is defined, how are you going to package that up? How are you going to talk about it? We really recommend, and we use our copywriters to really think about, marketing principles like problem, agitate, solution. Are you going to lean into storytelling? Are you going to make it, make sure there's UGC in there or testimonials? Is it going to be objection busting? There are so many different ways to package up the offer. So I would suggest, use the time now to get the offer defined and spend some time thinking about how you want to talk to people about that. Once the copy's done and you've figured out those hooks, you can start to translate that into the creative. So putting the text overlays that, from your concepts or your hooks or your sexy marketing angles, getting that into the creative as well. And again, really take your time with this, because there's so many design principles that you can think about to implement. And what those design principles do is make sure that you're thumb stopping, make sure that you are like piercing through the noise in the newsfeed. So it can be things like, I don't know, like appealing to the reptile brain. So using innuendo or like food to really kind of like get people psychologically attracted to you and, noticing who you are. We also I had a conversation actually yesterday with our head of creative, and we were talking about how on Black Friday, a lot of the creative is Black. So you'll quite often see Black images, Black videos. Black or red tends to be Black Friday kind of colors. So we were having a bit of debate about, is it better to go with Black creative so you're instantly recognizable as somebody coming with an offer, or are you better to go with the complete opposite with that and stand out? And we actually couldn't, we were battling it back and forth, and we couldn't actually make a decision on that one, and we ended up with test both. So have your creative do one version in Black and then one version where you just change the color. So no additional like design work needed, just literally change the color and test them against each other and see what gets the interruption. You might see impacts on CPMs, click-through rates, conversions, etc. So, take your time with it and really think about it. And if you can, get someone in to help you with it. Get a professional designer, someone who really understands all of these different principles and concepts, because it's so important more than ever now, especially with iOS coming in. And, targeting is just really different. Broad tends to be what works really well for us. So you do lose a little bit of control in terms of targeting if you're going broad or having those bigger lookalike audiences. So that's where the creative is absolutely vital and could be the make or break of your campaign. So don't rush it. Get some help if you can afford it, and if you've got someone that can help with some advice there, yeah, take your time, get it right, and you will 100% reap the rewards of doing that.
Awesome. Anything else on that early lead up?
Yeah, that's
Getting your ads early ready is one thing that I would add. So it was a couple of years ago now, but during the week before Black Friday, Facebook Ads Manager broke. You couldn't get in there. You couldn't change anything. You couldn't build ads. So if your ads weren't approved, they couldn't run. So that's one thing, is definitely have all your ads approved and ready, I would say, in the account like a week before, and have as much pre-prepared creative so that you can just spend your time during the busy period just switching things on and off and moving things around, but not actually building ads or creating new creative and waiting for it to be approved. So yeah. Anything else there, Charlie?
Yeah, just one other tip, I guess, or something you could try is, if you are defining the offer now, which is from the what you should do now section, and you can't make up your mind or you're not sure which way to go, you can use this period between now and October to test different offers. So you don't have to spend a lot of budget with this, spend enough for it to be statistically significant and to give you some direction. But if you can't decide whether to say 20% off or £20 off, for example, like, do some campaigns now and just test it. It doesn't have to be big budgets, but you can really start to get a feel for, okay, where are the click-through rates? What gives me a lower CPC? Then where, and how does that convert on the back end of that? So you can really get a vibe for what the soft stats and the hard stats are saying for different offers. And again, it's just making sure that you're leveraging this high buying period as much as possible by doing the prep work now.
Yeah, exactly. And as we mentioned at the top of the call, like having creative that's already tested and already working, that already has data behind it, it's going to set you up rather than launching all your ads on day one of Black Friday. And I know we're talking a lot about Black Friday, but we are generally referring to the entire period. The better seasoned and data-backed your ads are, the better they're going to perform. So think ahead, how can I make creative that's going to stand the test of time and work throughout this period? Because when you get an ad that works, you really don't want to have to be switching it off. So that's a key thing, really. Think about kind of seasonally generic ads that you can run across the whole period, evergreen, if you will, that suit the period. Okay, quickly, in the interest of time, by the way, everyone, we will be trying to finish up at 10 o'clock. So we've got about 18 minutes left. We'll run through the last bits of this, and then hopefully we have a little bit of time for questions at the end. So Pedro, what should people be doing on Google in the lead up to the busy period?
So I would recommend to, for sure, adapt the content, the site and the external assets, especially video. Having video assets that resonate and uplift the brand recall will give you an edge in your performance max and shopping efforts, because you will be effectively able to reach buyers outside the usual search and social environment.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder, Performance Max has access to, lots of additional inventory formats on YouTube, and as well as Gmail, the wider Google Display Network. And so it's a massive coverage and enables you to capture maybe and identify some of these users that you may have thought were not your usual shop. And then having also campaign dedicated assets within search will, of course, give you an edge in a highly competed battlefield. Last year, we worked with our jewellery client on consistent add to landing page journeys for the sales. And we saw a great traction from offer ad extensions with up to 50% higher CTRs and conversion rates.
Yeah.
And ultimately this led to triple, month-on-month Google revenue. We grew it from 35K to 100K, and
awesome.
We are keen to see how far dedicated videos can take us with Performance Max this year.
Yeah, super exciting. Performance Max is, it's the silver lining to the dark cloud of digital marketing at the moment, I think. So if you're not getting behind that, you definitely should be, right?
Definitely. And then just linked to what you mentioned earlier, considering how the projected volumes impact the efficiency metrics. So if you're able to be more flexible with your ROAS, you can capture sizable demand peak opportunities in campaigns with smart bidding strategies and open budgets.
Yeah.
Our homeware brand was able to capture 140% more month-to-month transactions, thanks to the joint planning process where we anticipated the demand peak and agreed on a slightly more flexible CPA target for the season.
Yeah.
And aligning that in the automated bidding settings helps make the most of such increased search demand.
Yeah, exactly. So allowing Google the control it needs, but giving it the kind of headroom to be flexible rather than constraining it with too tight a ROAS or CPA goal. So back to what we talked about earlier about if you can have a little bit of flexibility, you might be able to unlock a lot more volume. And again, it depends on what's important to you as a business. You might have a fixed amount of stock and you want to maximize the profit, or you might have a lot of stock you need to shift, and therefore it's going to be better off to just shift a lot of volume. So you decide the strategy based on your own individual business, which is key. Okay, anything else on the Google side, Pedro?
Just one interesting trend, and that is that voice search is continuing to grow at an even more accelerated pace than last year. So it's adding long tail keywords to the campaigns will become more important than ever. And writing simple texts for descriptions will allow voice assistants to easily read the website information. And so we recommend to add this variation as well in your creative strategy and put it into rotation. We use SEO tools to research such keywords, as well as Google's keyword planning tool. And then the autocomplete feature can help you also to get the idea of which keywords people use for searching for similar products. And yeah, when we comes to ad copywriting, we have a dedicated creative team that can help you to inspire you with marketing hooks that you can use in both your ads and your landing pages.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so that covers the period prior to the really busy bit. So then when we're talking about actually, right now we're in this period, kind of November has kicked off, people have started flocking to the site, they're looking for offers. What should we be doing, Charlie, during this crazy time?
I'll try and be a bit more efficient and quick fire with this one because I get off on tangents. So I'll fire off my list. I'll fire off my thoughts on this one. So during the period, what we find works quite well is tease the offer before, but not too far before. So maybe like 14 days before you can tease the offer. The caveat with that one is you might see conversions lower a little bit in the lead up to offers going live, but that's natural anyway. That's going to happen. Whether you tease the offer or not, people do hold out. So by teasing the offer, you're just really driving that anticipation a little bit more. Change your website and have the offer visible on the website so that it's really, really clear, really simple. Use the real estate on the website, like the banners at the top, to make sure it's front and center. Consider pop-ups if that's your thing. And, you have a brand where pop-ups feel comfortable and relevant to you. Just make sure you're drawing attention to it. Number 3, don't turn off your evergreen ads. As we've said a few times, things that have built data in the account is where the stability will come. And if you turn off those evergreen ads, all that time you've spent perfecting those ads and optimizing them, if you turn them off, even for a few days, that interrupts the learning. So, Black Friday, gifting period, it's just one quarter. You don't want to get into January, then have to start all the learning in your account again from scratch. So keep your BAU ads running. And especially during promotional period, as we said, if people click on an ad that doesn't look like a Black Friday ad and then find an offer, that's great. And actually, you might see better conversions on those ads and higher conversion rate. Number 4, test Dabber versus sales. So Dabber is dynamic ads with broad audiences. So that's really leaning into the product catalog. And we find these super, super, super successful just all year round. Really letting the algorithm do its thing and finding the right product for the right person gives so many positive outcomes. What we find with Dabber as well is because you're giving lots of control, I guess, or, lots of options for the algorithm, we see lower CPMs. So that can be really, really impactful during these really crazy times, especially the Black Friday weekend where CPMs are going to go up. So I would think about doing those kinds of ads versus, your static creative or video, conversion objective purchase optimized with your more traditional creative types. Test them, see which one works better, and put the budgets wherever you see the best results. Number 5, prepare for slow delivery and massive competition. The algorithms are just sluggish. The auction is super competitive. Everyone's clamoring to get into the inventory and the placements in the news feeds and all over the different social platforms. So you might find that you need to get your budgets up a little bit or increase your budgets to make sure that you can get that delivery. So partly to overcome the CPM challenges. So if your budget's too low, you just won't win the auction and you won't get the delivery. So really you need to think about putting them budgets up, especially for retargeting, which, as we know, generally the CPMs are higher, smaller audiences, harder to find, etc. I'm going off on the tangent, coming back. So put your budgets up, especially for retargeting. Number 6, expect delayed reporting. So, we know there's at least a 3-day data delay most of the time, but especially during this period, we do think the attribution is going to be slow. So if you're making optimizations, Q4 is a long time. 3 months is a long time to be suffering and making wrong decisions. So what we would be doing is looking at total website data. So make some changes. Are you seeing actual money coming into your Shopify or store, whatever that might be in the back end? Number 7, as much as you possibly can, try and avoid making really frequent changes to your ads, your bids, your budgets, and try to consider longer periods of time to assess performance. As Jessie said, we're talking Q4 as a whole here. With Black Friday specifically, if you're only running it for the 4 days, the Black Friday to Monday, Cyber Monday, that obviously becomes a little bit trickier. But as a general rule for Q4, just try and let things settle, let the algorithm find its way by not making too many adjustments. Hourly and daily performance metrics are going to be super chaotic and really incomplete. So you might end up damaging performance if you're making decisions based on what you're seeing in your account. And then number 8, which is my last one, is email and SMS should be a really integral part of your campaigns and should be really aligned with what you're doing across any of your advertising platforms, Google, Facebook, etc. You've got head of paid social and head of Google next to me over here, but that's not the full story. Like, you can be doing additional things with your email, your SMS. You've just got to talk to people however you can and find them the best way that you can and make those strategies aligned.
Awesome. And Pedro, what's going to be happening during the busy period over on Google? How are you approaching things?
Well, during the peak season, we definitely recommend to lean into automated bidding, as we said earlier, because machine learning provides a huge benefit in a complicated journey. You can make it smarter using tools and, using historical data assessment as well. I would be ready to open up your budgets, adjusting your ROAS or CPA targets for more gradual trends. So if you're running short-term promotions or expecting unusual short-term spikes, that's where Google Ads seasonality adjustments can be helpful too. Another point is regarding analytics. I think I mentioned this earlier as learning, and that's something you should be also leaning into, as the platforms record conversions to the day of the ad click, not the day of the conversion. And with Google Analytics, you can view real-time conversion rates and channel performance for your key dates to ensure you're not missing out on real strong conversion rates or performance on certain items. And next, I also have here budget monitoring alerts. So if you're not doing things right if you're doing things right with your target ROAS and CPA and open budgets, this may be not necessary, but you may also want to set up depleted budget reports. These are helpful because the worst thing that can happen during your peak season is your best performing campaigns running out of budget early. Setting up this type of alerts to maximize exposure and sales or leads during your peak periods as possible. And finally, channel reporting. So looking into hour by hour channel reporting for your key days will show you, overall changes in spend and traffic and conversions, and making sure that you're setting up yourself for success for next year.
Awesome. Okay. So we've got a few minutes left just to talk about what we expect to see. So we talked at the top of the call about what we saw last year, like kind of what the trends were. We know this year, the elephant in the room is that we think there's a recession coming. We hope it's not, but maybe it'll be here by then. We know, for instance, that the inflation is here already, so people have less money overall to spend. What else are we expecting to see, and how are we combating that? I'll go to you first, Charlie.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenging one, isn't it? I think some of it we've covered already. So I guess that the real key one specifically for paid social is we know the CPMs are going to be up. So the way to combat this is just make sure that the media buying is efficient as possible. So as I mentioned before, use bigger audiences. You can likely see some CPM relief with bigger audiences. The DABA campaign, so dynamic ads to broad audiences, we normally see CPM advantages there. And also really make sure your creative is next level, sorry. So we always see rewards in CPMs when you have really engaging and really well converting ads. Facebook will always put CPMs up and kind of penalize you on any ads that it doesn't feel are relevant or if the signals on the ad show that it's not relevant. So really making sure your creative is delivering will help to get CPM relief. So make it clear, make it engaging, make it thumb stopping.
Yeah.
Also think, what might be different this year is we might see like consumer buying patterns being different. So I think last year we were still kind of in the halo of Q4. We were still kind of having the halo impact of increased online shopping in this, almost post-COVID landscape where we were in Q4 last year. So I do think it's likely that we might see buyers shopping in the high street a little bit more than they were last year. So again, going back to what we've mentioned with telling the brand story, making it as easy as possible and reducing all friction to online purchases is going to be super, super important.
That really summarizes it. The days of just maximizing your peak period are gone, and you really need to be doing a great effort in your off-peak period to make sure that you understand your target audience and the state of your account leading up to the peak season.
Yeah. Cool. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thanks so much for joining us here on the E-commerce Impact podcast. If I can ask you one favor, can you please make sure you subscribe? And if you can, leave us a review. It helps us have a much bigger impact with what we're trying to do here at the E-commerce Impact podcast. Now, if you're ready to take your e-com store to the next level, then go to www.ecommerceimpactpodcast.com and click on the button to book a strategy call with me or my team. We offer a free order of your advertising and a custom growth plan, so you really have nothing to lose by getting in touch and jumping on a call with us. See you soon, and watch out for the next episode in 2 weeks' time.